The first time I saw Lucas, the world seemed to slow down, not in a dramatic movie way, but in that quiet moment when something inside you shifts without warning. I was sitting by the window of a small bookstore cafe, lost between the pages of a novel I wasn't really reading, when he walked in. His presence had a kind of calm confidence that filled the room. The kind you notice not because it's loud, but because it feels steady. He asked if the seat across from me was taken. I said no, not realizing that word would open the door to everything that would follow. Back then, I was 28, an editor for a local magazine in a sleepy coastal town called Maple Bay. My life was structured, predictable even. I liked it that way. I woke early, went for runs along the beach, drank too much coffee, and worked late editing stories about other people's lives. But Lucas, he didn't belong to routine. He was spontaneous, with a voice that carried warmth even when he said the simplest things. He worked as an architect, designing homes that he described as shelters for the soul. I used to tease him for that line, but secretly, I admired the way he believed in beauty and meaning. Our connection was immediate but unspoken. We began meeting often at that same cafe, at first by coincidence, then by choice. The conversations flowed effortlessly: books, music, philosophy, the strange way loneliness can live inside even the happiest moments. Lucas had a talent for making ordinary questions sound profound. He'd look at me across the table and ask, "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something you can't name?" I didn't have an answer, but his eyes made me think maybe he was the thing I'd been waiting for. Weeks turned into months. Our friendship evolved quietly, like a photograph developing in slow motion. Lucas started coming over on weekends. We'd cook dinner together, though he always managed to burn something. He'd laugh it off, saying, "You can't trust me with the stove, but you can trust me with everything else." I believed him. Maybe I wanted to believe him. Love often begins not with certainty, but with a leap of faith. The first time he told me he loved me, it wasn't during some grand moment. We were walking home in the rain, sharing one umbrella that wasn't big enough for two. I was shivering, and he wrapped his arm around me and said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I love you, Ethan." Just that. No hesitation, no build-up. I remember laughing nervously and asking, "Are you sure?" He smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything." That night, I wrote those words in my journal, afraid I might forget how they sounded. I didn't know then that I'd one day remember them for an entirely different reason. For a while, everything felt easy. Lucas and I created our own rhythm: morning coffee, late-night movies, quiet Sundays at home. My friends noticed the change in me. "You seem lighter," one of them said. I was. I felt seen. Understood. Loved. But sometimes, love hides its own shadows. I began noticing small inconsistencies, things that didn't fit the story we were writing together. It started subtly: missed calls, sudden silences when I entered the room. Lucas would smile and say, "Work stress," and I'd accept that. He had projects all over the state, after all. Still, there were moments when his eyes looked distant, as if he were somewhere else entirely. Once, late at night, I woke to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. The glow from the screen lit his face in cold blue light. I asked if everything was okay. He hesitated before replying, "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." He turned off the phone then, but I noticed how tightly he held it, as if afraid it might reveal something he wasn't ready to share. I tried not to dwell on it. Love, I told myself, requires trust. And I did trust him, more than anyone I'd ever known. Yet, a quiet unease began to grow inside me, like a small crack in glass you can't unsee once you've noticed it. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset from the balcony, Lucas seemed distant again. The sky was painted with gold and crimson, but he didn't look up once. "You're somewhere else," I said softly. He looked at me, startled, as if caught in a thought he didn't want to explain. "I'm just tired, Ethan," he said after a pause. "Things have been complicated at work." His tone was gentle, but there was something heavy behind it. I wanted to ask more, to press for the truth, but fear held me back. What if I didn't like the answer, so I smiled, pretending everything was fine. That's the thing about love, it teaches you how to lie to yourself beautifully. Despite the growing tension, there were still moments that reminded me why I'd fallen for him. Like the night we drove out to the pier after midnight, just to listen to the waves. He held my hand, thumb tracing small circles against my skin, and whispered, "If I ever hurt you, promise you'll tell me before it's too late." I didn't understand why he said that then. It sounded like a warning, though I brushed it off as sentiment. As months passed, his absences grew longer. Sometimes he'd disappear for entire weekends, saying he had to visit clients in another city. He always came back with the same smile, the same tenderness, but something about him felt altered, like he was returning from a place I couldn't follow. I told myself to stop overthinking. People have secrets, even the ones who love you. And maybe that's okay. But deep down, I knew something was shifting between us, something I couldn't quite name. The last peaceful night we shared came unexpectedly. Lucas had cooked dinner, badly, as usual, and we ended up ordering pizza instead. We sat on the couch, laughing about nothing. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You make me forget who I used to be." I didn't understand the sadness in his eyes when he said it, but I remember wanting to freeze that moment forever. He kissed my forehead, whispering, "I love you, Ethan. Don't ever doubt that." And though I smiled, something about the way he said it felt like a goodbye disguised as love. That night, after he fell asleep, I lay awake beside him, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. I told myself I was imagining things. That love doesn't unravel this quietly. But as I watched the moonlight slide across his face, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was already slipping away, one secret at a time. What I didn't know then was that the truth wasn't just about another person or another life. It was something deeper, something that would make me question everything I believed about love, honesty, and how well we can ever really know someone. And it all began the moment he said he loved me. The next morning broke with an uneasy calm. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed and quiet, but the silence inside the Blake house felt heavier than before. Ryan was already outside chopping wood, his voice rising now and then in laughter as Olivia handed him coffee. From my window, they looked like fragments of a life untouched by doubt, solid, uncomplicated, whole. I envied that. When I went down for breakfast, Ryan greeted me with his usual warmth. "Sleep all right, man?" he asked, clapping a hand on my back. "Yeah," I lied. "Slept fine." He nodded, turning toward the window. "Liam's gone into town. He does that when he needs space." The word settled oddly. Space from what, I wondered, but didn't ask. The morning moved slowly. Ryan and I worked together in the shed behind the house, fixing an old bench he'd promised his father he'd repair. He talked about his plans, how he wanted to move back one day, how this place still felt like home. I listened, grateful for the noise, though every now and then his voice blurred into something distant. When Liam returned around noon, he greeted us casually, but the moment our eyes met, the air shifted again. There was no hostility, only awareness, sharp and unmistakable. Ryan didn't notice. He was too busy recounting stories from the night before. After lunch, Ryan decided to drive Olivia into town. "We'll be gone a couple of hours," he said, keys jingling. "You two should relax. The weather's too good to waste." The door shut, and the hum of the car faded down the road. For a few minutes, neither of us moved. Then Liam spoke. "You ever feel like you're in the wrong story?" The question startled me. He leaned against the table, arms folded, eyes steady. "You're careful, Ethan. You watch what you say, what you feel. But that kind of control," he paused, searching for words. "It's exhausting, isn't it?" I didn't answer. He took a slow breath. "I didn't mean to make things complicated," he said. "It's just, sometimes you meet someone, and the world around you tilts, even if it shouldn't." His honesty disarmed me. I wanted to deny it, to remind him of Ryan, of boundaries and loyalty, but the words stuck. Because part of me understood exactly what he meant. Liam, I began carefully, whatever this is, it can't, I know, he interrupted softly. That's what makes it worse. The air between us tightened. There was no touch, no movement, only silence filled with the weight of everything unsaid. Then, as if sensing the moment collapsing under its own strain, he turned away and walked toward the porch that I followed after a long hesitation. Outside, the sun hung low, golden and merciful. He stood by the railing, staring across the field. Ryan's the kind of person who believes in people completely, he said. He doesn't think they can fail him. I swallowed hard. He deserves that kind of faith. Liam nodded slowly. He does. That's what makes this feel so wrong. The honesty of it left no room for defense. Neither of us were villains, yet both were guilty. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was surrender that we stayed there until Ryan's car pulled back into view. The moment broke, cleanly and absolutely. Liam stepped back, hands in his pockets, his voice quiet. You should tell him goodbye before you go. That evening, the house was filled with light again. Olivia played music while Ryan grilled outside, his energy easy and bright. Everything appeared normal, yet every word, every laugh felt rehearsed, like a play we both knew the ending to. After dinner, Ryan poured us drinks and raised his glass. To old friends and new memories, he said. Liam's glass met mine softly. His expression didn't change, but something final passed between us, a recognition that this would never be spoken of again. When night came, I packed my bag quietly. Ryan found me by the door. You leaving already? He asked, half smiling. Got work early tomorrow, I said, avoiding his eyes. That he nodded, though his smile faltered. You barely stayed 2 days, Ethan. Everything all right? I wanted to tell him everything, that some connections feel like accidents waiting to happen, that loyalty can fracture in silence, but all I managed was, yeah. Everything's fine. He stepped closer and pulled me into a brief, firm hug. Your family here, he said. Don't forget that. The words hit harder than he knew. When I stepped outside, the air was cool, the sky filled with restless stars. Liam was standing near the porch steps, half in shadow. That he didn't speak at first. Then, softly, I wasn't supposed to care. I know, I said. That he looked up, eyes sharp with something that wasn't regret but understanding. Then let's not pretend, he murmured. We'll carry it quietly. You'll go, and I'll stay, and maybe that's what's meant to happen. I nodded, the ache in my chest almost physical. Take care of him, I said. I always do. That was the last thing he said before turning away, his silhouette swallowed by the dark. I stood there for a moment longer, memorizing the sound of crickets, the faint creak of the porch boards, the life continuing behind those walls as if nothing had shifted. Driving away, the road stretched empty under my headlights. The night was still, the fields whispering in the wind. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, as if holding on could undo what had already been written. Halfway down the road, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. Forgot to tell you, thanks for coming, man. It meant a lot. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I put the phone face down and kept driving, the silence pressing close. The house disappeared behind me, but its echo remained. Liam's quiet honesty, Ryan's unwavering trust, and the realization that not all betrayals need witnesses. Some unfold in glances, in pauses, in the moments when truth waits on the edge of a word that never leaves your mouth. By the time I reached the highway, dawn had begun to break, soft, gray, and indifferent. The light touched the world as though nothing had happened, as though I hadn't left a piece of myself behind in that quiet countryside. And maybe, in some small way, that was true. Because some choices don't end when you drive away, they linger, silent and heavy, in the space between memory and regret. That I never told Ryan what happened, and he never asked. But sometimes, when he calls and his voice carries that same easy trust, I hear the echo of a night when everything changed, and realize that silence, too, can be a kind of confession. The next morning, Ethan woke with the uneasy residue of dreams that wouldn't quite dissolve. Daniel's words echoed in his mind, sometimes people only see what they're ready to understand. The sentence clung to him, weaving itself through every thought that day. He tried to paint, but the brush refused to move as freely as it used to. His art, once his escape, now mirrored his confusion. Over the following weeks, Daniel seemed more distant, often canceling plans with vague excuses. Yet when they did speak, he was tender, thoughtful, almost protective. Ethan wanted to believe it was just stress or fear, that love sometimes required patience. But a small, growing voice in his mind whispered otherwise. At home, Robert's behavior had shifted too. Claire mentioned during one of their phone calls that he'd been spending more time working late. She said it lightly, as though it were nothing unusual, but Ethan caught the trace of worry in her tone. He brushed it off, telling himself it was just parental instinct. Still, something about the overlap unsettled him. Daniel's sudden elusiveness, his father's absences, both circling the same unspoken mystery point. One evening, Daniel invited Ethan over to a rented apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't the first time Ethan had been there, but that night, something about the place felt different. A framed photo on the shelf caught his eye, a familiar park bench, the one near his parents' neighborhood. Daniel noticed his gaze. "You like that spot?" Daniel asked, his tone calm but watchful. "I grew up near there," Ethan replied. "It's strange. I've never seen anyone take that exact picture." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe we've crossed paths before and didn't know it." Ethan laughed softly, but his heart gave a small, uncertain flutter. "Maybe." As the night went on, the conversation drifted from art to childhood. Daniel listened intently, his questions gentle but probing. When Ethan mentioned his father, his rigidity, his pride, Daniel's expression shifted for just a moment, as if something unspoken had struck him. "He sounds complicated," Daniel said quietly. "He is," Ethan replied. "But he tries. I just wish he'd see me, really see me." Daniel's eyes softened, though his voice trembled slightly. Sometimes people only understand what they're brave enough to face. The repetition of that phrase chilled Ethan. He tried to mask his reaction, nodding slowly, pretending it was just another coincidence. But the air between them thickened, as though truth hovered just beneath the surface. Later that night, when Daniel stepped into the kitchen to pour wine, Ethan's phone buzzed with a message from his mother. "Dad's been acting strange lately. He keeps saying he needs time alone. Are you okay?" Ethan glanced toward the kitchen doorway. Daniel was humming softly, the low tune oddly familiar. His father used to hum the same melody on Sunday mornings. His chest tightened. It couldn't be. His mind raced to connect fragments that refused to align, the phrasing, the park photo, the tune. They were just coincidences, they had to be. But then, Daniel returned with 2 glasses of wine and said something that stopped Ethan cold. "You remind me of someone I used to know, someone who wanted the world to make sense before they could love themselves." It was a phrase his father had once told him when he came out at 18, word for word. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. The glass trembled in his hand. He forced a smile, pretending not to notice, not to understand. The rest of the evening passed in fragmented conversation, his mind caught between disbelief and dawning fear. When Daniel finally left for a meeting, Ethan sat in silence, surrounded by shadows. He couldn't sleep. At midnight, his curiosity overtook his restraint. He picked up Daniel's coat, which he had left draped over the couch, intending to hang it up, but as he lifted it, a wallet slipped from the inside pocket. He hesitated before picking it up. His conscience begged him to stop, to respect privacy. But his instincts screamed otherwise. Inside was a driver's license. The name was what shattered everything, Robert Cole. Ethan's breath caught violently. His body went rigid, a tremor crawling down his spine. He blinked, hoping he'd read it wrong, but the letters stayed fixed, undeniable. The photo showed his father, younger, smiling faintly, and beside it, a folded paper tucked neatly into the wallet's sleeve. Ethan unfolded it with trembling fingers. It was a rental agreement. The address was Daniel's apartment. His chest constricted, air refused to come easily. Daniel wasn't just some mysterious stranger. He was his father, not in body, but in disguise, in deceit, in betrayal deeper than Ethan could have imagined. Robert had been living a double life, pretending to be someone else, pretending to understand Ethan by becoming the kind of man Ethan might fall for. The room swayed. Ethan dropped the wallet as if it burned him. Everything, every conversation, every message, turned sickeningly false. The affection, the compassion, the warmth that had felt healing now reeked of manipulation. That he stumbled to the bathroom sink and splashed water on his face, trying to steady his breathing. The mirror stared back at him, fractured and foreign. How could his father have done this? Was it a test? A punishment? Or worse, an attempt to feel what Ethan felt, to study his son's love from inside the wound itself? By morning, Ethan couldn't bring himself to speak to anyone. His phone lit up with messages from Daniel. "Are you okay? You left something behind, please, don't disappear." He ignored them all. Each word now felt like poison. That evening, he drove to his parents' house without fully deciding why. The drive blurred past him, lights smearing across his windshield, heart pounding against his ribs. When he arrived, Claire opened the door, surprised to see him. Robert wasn't home. He said he had another late meeting, she said softly. Ethan forced a nod, his voice barely holding steady. "Yeah. I figured." He walked through the living room, taking in every detail, the framed photos, the smell of coffee, the piano in the corner. It all looked exactly the same, and yet none of it felt real anymore. When Robert finally came home near midnight, he froze at the sight of Ethan standing by the window. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. The tension between them was no longer invisible, it was alive, pulsing through the air. "I know," Ethan said finally, his voice shaking. "I know who Daniel is." Robert's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Ethan's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. "Was this your way of understanding me? Pretending to be someone else? Lying to me just to feel control again?" "Ethan, don't," he said sharply. "You don't get to say my name like that." Silence swallowed the room. Claire stirred upstairs, but didn't come down. The truth, heavy and irreparable, hung between them like a storm neither could escape. Ethan turned toward the door, his voice low but steady. "You wanted to understand me, Dad. Congratulations. Now you know what it feels like to be broken by someone you love." He walked out before Robert could respond. The night air hit him like glass, sharp, cold, unforgiving. As he drove away, the road ahead blurred through the shimmer of tears he could no longer hold back. Behind him, the house stood still in the dark, and inside it, a father finally faced the weight of what understanding truly meant, and for the first time, Ethan didn't look back.